I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh my god, the fat guy finally brought food into his video. I knew it would eventually happen. Let's be serious here for a second. I'd like to ask some serious questions. Yeah, I've got a bag of cheese here, and I got a bag of that stuff. A lot of YouTubers have been talking about food. There's a few things that have been hardcore statistical anomalies that have been going on. I'd like to address a few facts, but first I'd like to make a reference that I'm pretty sure everybody's familiar with in one form or another. I didn't get in fights in school, but I've seen this happen many times, and I know you've seen it too. Is that someone will do something, horrible, and they'll pick a fight on another person, and that person's just trying to defend themselves. But since the world is unfair, obviously so, and nothing is more unfair than school, which of course where people don't get education, so like send the horrible person to the same punishment as the person that was completely innocent. Person just defending themselves, or trying to, ward off the blows from the antagonizer, right? Everybody's seen or heard this happen. It's like, what did I do? Completely unfair. I'd like to talk about food here on a couple different fronts. I also like to talk about some of the comments of things that I've known were happening but been confirmed to me by you since I read every comment. And we've been hearing this going on now for a couple years, but it's ramped up a lot. But I'm also addressing the Russians in this as an example because currently there's a whole lot of sanctions against Russia, both by Europe and the United States. I'm not interested in discussing that one way or another. It's just a simple fact. I've watched, and I used to live in Russia, бывший русско-английский переводчик, former Russian-English translator, about 25 plus videos of people that are 1,000% believable, going to the grocery store, looking at the price of imported items versus stuff that is made locally, right? Like, well, this stuff might have gone up 20%, this stuff is imported, it's gone up, 250%, for example, but generally speaking, the staples of life like chliab, masla, cheese, bread, stuff like that, eggs, it has gone up. Watching all these videos of both women and men that are native Russians that are living there, the staples that are local, stuff that you need to survive and eat, bread, cheese, meat, so on and so forth. 20 to 50%, okay? Now this is upon Russia, Russia, where sanctions have been, for good reason, been placed, yeah? My question to you, and nobody has addressed this fact, kind of like the two kids that were involved in a skirmish, one was the antagonizer, guilty as sin, the other person not guilty of anything. Because no form of justice, none that I know of, places self-defense as guilt, of course. But here in the United States, I'm speaking also to the Ruski Narodi, the Russian people, but also to the Europeans and Americans. Don't you find it extremely odd that the United States and Europe, I don't know to what extent in Europe, but I know it's happened. I mean, I've had a million people tell me this over the past 2 years, and I know what's going on now. We know about gas prices being astronomically high. What percentage exactly, I don't know. I know in Russia, the equivalent on cheap benzene, gasoline, I know it's in liters there, but it's $1.89, at least it was a couple days ago in Russia. $1.89 a gallon. It's always been cheap in Russia, and of course here average is like $4.20 a gallon, something like that. It goes up and down. It's still astronomically high. Here where there are no sanctions, I'm telling the Russian people and the Europeans, why is nobody talking about this fact? Here where there is no sanctions, the percentage of increase on food and staples and everything. I'm not talking about imported stuff like, oh, the French wine, my French wine, I don't drink wine or alcohol. My French wine tripled in price. Okay, it's an import. Fuel costs are up, takes it more to get here cost-wise. I'm talking about local stuff, simple stuff. It's radically higher. Here in the United States where there are no sanctions, and Europe, to what extent, depending on the country, I know it varies, prices are radically higher. I'm speaking to Europeans, Russians, Americans, Canadians. Is there any reason why nobody's because all these, there's thousands of videos on YouTube talking about, oh, the Russian people are paying astronomically higher prices because the ruble is in the dirt, which is true. And they're paying higher prices on staples, which is true. But compared to what? I'm not here in the United States under any sanctions, and yet food prices are redonkulous. Redonkulous is like 2 levels above ridiculous. It's absolutely, what would the English call it? Gobsmacked? That means they're just like blown away. Here's like a double bag of this stuff. Yeah, and I was like, oh, you shouldn't be eating that. I know someone's going to say that. Whatever. There's a 2-pack, 2-pack of this stuffed cheese. And this is at a discount warehouse. Costco. Yeah, I know I should be shopping at Costco, whatever. This stuff had been $11 forever. Now it is right under $16 for a double pack of this stuff. This is a staple. Now, it might not be this cheese that you eat. You might not eat cheese, but that cheese is kind of a staple, like cheese, bread, eggs, milk, молоко, huh? Higher, percentage-wise. I know you could say, well, it needs to be adjusted for what someone's income is. People in Russia generally don't make as much. Prices are radically high here. I mean, here's something that I really don't eat anymore. I call it a bag of slop. It comes in like several different flavors. It's like chicken Alfredo penne. Call it slop because when you cook it, it looks like slop. Comes in like 7 or 8 different flavors. This stuff has been like $5.60 forever. Now it's right at the edge of $9. You could get it for like $8 if you go to Walmart, where you save $1 because Walmart is, well, you know what Walmart is. I know it, and you know it. I don't need to say those words, but this stuff is radically higher under this country, which last I recall, the United States is not under any sanctions at all. We have higher and similar price increases here in the United States as Russia, which is under sanctions. And the bottom has dropped out of the ruble. Let me interject this while I'm thinking about it. No government cares about you. I don't care what government you live under. Mine, yours. Government does not care about you. You should help yourself, help your family, help your friends, help others. But government is not a living entity. It is an insentient phantasm. No government cares about you. No matter how much you love it or hate it or otherwise, no government cares about you. Here's another fact. I mentioned it in a post on the community post. A lot of people didn't believe me. They should look it up. We call this a statistical anomaly. It's completely impossible statistically. There have been, within the past year, 17 food processing facilities that have either entirely or greatly burned or been destroyed. Some of these have been by really odd ways, like General Mills food processing facility was partially destroyed by an airplane. Nosedive right into the General Mills plant. 2 months ago, I believe, another plane flew into a food processing facility. I think that place, as a result of the plane crash, burnt to the ground. 17 in less than the past year, and this year alone, 2022, and we're only 4 months in, we've had 9 food processing facilities in the United States either partially or totally destroyed. I went to 3 grocery stores today. I know I'm not a fat guy, but I was looking for certain things, right? They were worse today, and I'm not exaggerating, as far as availability, than they were at the height of, what's been going on for the past 2 years. The worst. Interestingly enough, Costco was not that way. There's no people running on toilet paper anymore. Prices are just, even though it's a discount place you have to have a membership to, prices were astronomically high. I did watch, like I said, over 20-some Russian videos of people walking in the grocery store with their GoPro, showing you the prices of staples, imported stuff, bread, cheese, masala, eggs, and so on. So please explain to me, how is it that we have high as or higher costs of staples, to purchase, to survive, food, so on and so forth, as a country that has crippling sanctions put on it. A lot of people are telling me what I knew was true that I've heard from other people. Fertilizer, depending on the type of fertilizer, is 2 to 5 times higher, between 200 to 500% higher. Someone in Melbourne says he lives next to a person that manages broccoli, 500 acres of broccoli and lettuce. The fertilizer more than doubled. So necessitatively, great word, had to up the prices to those he supplied the lettuce to, the grocery stores. The grocery stores gave the middle digit to this person that takes care of the broccoli and the lettuce, and said, we're not going to pay it. Like, I have to. The fertilizer price is way up. They're not going to pay it. So resultantly, we have a vicious cycle here. They plowed over more than half of all the broccoli and lettuce. This is and I know all the stories about the government paying farmers not to grow food, which are true and have been validated by a million different people out there. But this is another horrible, vicious cycle. With fertilizer radically, farmers don't make that much money to begin with. But if they have to raise their prices due to the cost of CODB, call it, cost of doing business. Cost of doing business, fertilizer prices are more than doubled, depending on the type of fertilizer and what needs the fertilizer. I have to raise my prices. The grocery stores say, no, we're not going to pay it. Fine, I can't sell it to you at a loss. So they literally destroy the food. In this case, of course, they are not being paid to destroy the food, whereas the government is paying people not to grow food. This is where all these grocery store chains are not paying to purposefully have food destroyed. And the conclusion of all the evidence that I've seen, I've been looking at a lot of evidence, and I'm not a conspiracy person at all. Some conspiracies are true, though. The word conspiracy is extremely hot and a jaded word that's been misused both in connotation and denotation. That there is going to be, a food crisis sometime in the middle or latter part of this year. I mean, there just is. People think food prices are high now. Wait. I'd like to add one thing onto the end of this video. And there's a perfect example, since most people have seen this movie. It's called The Imitation Game, where they actually cracked the Enigma machine to uncover what the Germans were saying in World War II. The Enigma machine was cracked by using another machine. Fine. But they knew immediately that we couldn't use all that information, because then the Germans would know we would cracked the Enigma machine. And so they used statistical analysis to use the least amount of actionable intelligence so that the Germans would not know that we cracked their machine. The same is true of what's going on now. There's all these different fronts that are hitting people all over the world. You have the KUF. Yeah, the KUF. You have the juice. We have the food shortages. We have the escalating hot war, that America and Europe and other entities are trying to escalate. I see multi-pronged, multifaceted, multi-vectored attack on trying to bring everybody to their knees. If the United States or anybody else, I don't care if you use the word NWO, because people love to say New World Order and NWO. I don't care what country it is or what entity it is. They would never, if it was a single pointed, all out to bring people to their knees, it would never work, because there would be immediate, hardcore fast resistance. Same way, like you say, you boil a frog in the hot water. Stick them in hot water, you stick them in warm water, and you slowly increase the temperature, and the frog will. I know one thing for absolute certainty. If you think that this multi-pronged attack on citizens of the world is going on from several different vectors, and it is, then it is 1,000% undeniable that this scenario, this statistical analysis, hasn't been plotted out a million different ways possible with supercomputers. And guarantee you that algorithms I know for a fact algorithms do exist for scenarios. I mean, that's how war scenarios are plotted out on supercomputers so that the DoD and other, evil entities know what to do. All of this has been plotted out with extreme precision, using statistics and algorithms, and it would never work if it was a single-pronged, full frontal on society, such as just the coof. Wouldn't work. Full frontal, hardcore, it would never work. You have to slowly bring people to their knees by this vector, then that vector, then that vector, then that. N runs around, come up from behind, come at you from above, from this vector, that vector. And that's exactly. Feel free to disagree with me. Tell me why I'm wrong. I read every comment. All of this is exactly how it would be statistically done. We need to do this, this, and this at this time, and when that happens, we do this, but if that doesn't happen, then this happens. All of this has been plotted out in a million ways to Sunday by algorithms and statistics using supercomputers. 100%, 1,000%, if you think that's what's going on. If you do, then that is an absolute 1,000% certainty. Undeniably so. So tell me what you think on this. Is there going to be a food shortage? I mean, really, I don't tell anybody what to do. What you do in your life is none of my business. I can't stand pushy people to tell other people what to do. And do this, but I'm not interested in that, and I never have been. Other than selling leather goods, I'm not selling anything to anybody. That's a lot of hard work, too, so no matter what I charge for it, time is money. My entire life is filled with working 7 days a week. I did take the day off yesterday. As you can see, my face is sunburned. I went walking on my farm with my parents. I mean, I'm glad I have a lot of heirloom seeds in the basement. They're stored perfectly. I literally do know how to grow stuff. If I have to get myself a used tractor, even if it's a manual one, and a horse, like they did on Little House on the Prairie, have the horse pull the plow, I'll do it. I have, I'm at least proud of the fact that I have that capacity under my belt. Why am I not growing food this year? I thought about that endlessly. I would like to. I don't have the time for it, and I also don't want to put in $5,000 worth of work and labor to get $300 worth of food. I have like a year and a half's worth of food, non-perishable food stored up. I've said this now for a year and a half, but I've never been more adamant about it, that people really should get some non-perishable stuff. Powdered milk, powdered eggs. It's been impossible, really, the past 2 years to get powdered eggs. I mean, impossible. I mean, you could buy, but the prices were so ridiculous. They were completely off the Richter scale ridiculous. So you almost could get it, but the prices were insane. Powdered milk, powdered flour, Mountain House meals, those last for 30 years. You could complain about Mountain House meals are up. For what they were just a year and a half ago, they're up by 25% roughly. But please answer me the question. Russians, Americans, Europeans, Canadians, how is it that America and Europe, I don't know to what extent depending on the country, is experiencing the exact same issue on staples, food staples, as a country that's under heavy sanctions with a greatly deflated currency? Answer me that one. We've got the same thing going on. Way worse gas prices. Way worse inflation-wise. Food prices as bad or worse as the country with sanctions on it. For good reason. Just answer me that one. No one's asking that question. I'm asking you that question. Please answer me that question for me. Thank you so much.